All right, West Virginia fans, it is officially here. It is officially game week. It feels like forever ago that West Virginia was playing their first game, not their first game, but their last game, right? It feels like it's been forever since that last has happened, and it's finally here, the start of Rich Rod 2.0 era. So in this episode today, we're going to talk about the game ahead coming up versus Robert Morris. We're going to break down what that team has to offer, break down the weekend's game, and also talk about some other West Virginia storylines. With that being said, if you're a Mountaineer fan, please remember to like and subscribe to the show. We've been growing like crazy. We definitely want to continue getting more subscribers as we get into football season. With that being said, let's get right into today's show. So, Saturday, August 30th, a few days away, 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus. What a beautiful day it's scheduled to be at Morgantown and Mountaineer Field. 74 degrees and sunny. Last year was quite the opposite versus Penn State, right? It was a hot, brutally hot day out there for that game versus Penn State. So a much different feel for week one. Feels like a fall day right off the top of the bat. If you're not going to the game, ESPN Plus is where you can watch it. I know for me in New Jersey, we'll definitely be tuned in on ESPN Plus up here. But looks like a nice day, nice tailgating weather for you guys that are going to the game versus Robert Morris, 2 o'clock on Saturday. Let's talk about West Virginia all-time versus FCS opponents. 25-0, unblemished record here. What I want to say about this is, it's hard to impress in these games. Even if you win by a lot, it's like, okay, you beat Robert Morris, you beat a Liberty, you beat a Chattanooga, whatever. However, if you look bad in these games, I think it's a sign of what's going to come in the season. If you look at the 2019 game versus JMU, we only won by a touchdown. Now, I was very happy that we beat JMU that game. It was Neil Brown's first game, and we got out there with a win, and that was a very dicey game going into the game, but only beating an FCS opponent by a touchdown. We didn't make a bowl game, so that was a bad look. And then the other game that reminds me of is 2013 versus William & Mary. I never forget leaving that stadium, being in a dogfight with William & Mary. I knew from that game one versus William & Mary, it was going to be a very long season for the West Virginia Mountaineers. So you got to take care of business in these games. We have done that so far, but I think not only do you have to win by a lot to really impress me and look good. If we stub our toe and we don't look great out of the gate versus these teams, it's definitely not a good sign. Last year against Albany, even though it was 49-14, our defense looked terrible in the secondary. I think we gave up like 300 passing yards last year versus Albany, and that showed you that the team in the secondary wasn't very good. So I think that you need to win by a lot. It can't be close, and you have to get off to a good start. But overall, we've never lost any of these games. Let's talk about Robert Morris University for a second. Coop, what's up, man? I appreciate you coming on. It's been a while since we've done a live show. ESP, absolutely. So, Coop, it's good to see you. Let's talk about Robert Morris. Robert Morris is located in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, so right up the road a Pittsburgh suburb. It was founded in 1921. The average enrollment is only around 5,000 students. That's about the size of West Virginia's freshman class. So not a very big school. They compete in the Northeast Conference, and they're coached by former Miami standout Bernard Clark Jr. Very small school. If you look at the stadium, I think the bleachers only go on one side. I actually think my high school stadium in New Jersey is bigger than this school. I got another comment from Coop, 66-0. Yeah, I could see that score. I know it's like a 39.5-point spread. I think I saw today. So 66-0 is something we'll take. The question is, how many quarterbacks are we going to see? Again, keep the comments coming. It's good to hear from you guys. Let's talk about Robert Morris and their recent games versus FBS opponents. It hasn't been good. Central Michigan, they lost 45-0. So not exactly Coop's 66-0, but 45-0 is a big whooping. Closed the gap a little bit with Miami, Ohio, only 14-31 in a loss there. They lost to Air Force in 2023, 42-7, and then Utah State a loss 36-14, which is respectable. Utah State's a pretty decent program, but they haven't played a Power 4 and Power 5 school in recent memory. This might be the biggest game in like school history for them. So it's definitely going to be the biggest crowd they see. I mean, could you imagine being Robert Morris and your first game is against Rich Rodriguez in his first game in 17 years? That is absolutely wild for those players. Got another comment from Coop. RMU can't get past Zach Alley's D. Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the storylines we want to watch is Zach Alley and his team. This game, we've heard a lot about him, and I think he's a superstar in the making. So watching Zach coach should be fun. Let's talk about Robert Morris and what they did last year. We talked about the Utah State game. They also had a loss to Edinboro. Fun fact about Edinboro, current wrestling coach at West Virginia, Tim Flynn, was the coach at Edinboro. So Edinboro, very small school that Robert Morris lost to last year. They had wins versus Mercyhurst. They beat Wagner. They got smoked by Eastern Kentucky, and we actually played Eastern Kentucky in the 2020 season. That was the replacement for the Florida State game. That game was not close at all. We played a bunch of players in that one. They shut out Delaware State. They beat Long Island's another school that we played a few years ago. They beat them 45-31. They beat St. Francis 17-0. Funny story about St. Francis. They actually last year decided to go from Division I and drop down to Division III. They felt it wasn't worth the financials to stay Division I, so they went all the way from D1 to D3 last year. Beat Merrimack 6-0. They lost to Duquesne 31-6. We played Duquesne 2 years ago. That's where we got Aiden Garns from, who now moved on to Arizona. They lost to Central Connecticut State in overtime, and then they beat Stonehill. So not exactly a Power 4 schedule, not exactly a Big 12 schedule. Again, we're going to be big favorites in this game versus Robert Morris. Another prediction from Frank Martinez, 63-12. So that would be pretty cool to see us get 60 points in Rich Rod's first game. I think it would set the tone even versus an FCS opponent. I cannot remember the last time that we put up 60 points in a game. I think it's been a long time, probably since like the Geno Smith era that we haven't put up that many points in a game. So that would be impressive. Let's talk about the notes of Robert Morris. Anthony Chickett, their starting quarterback, actually transferred to Temple. So a lot of their guys that have leveled up are not there anymore. They have all moved on to bigger places. And that's the tough thing about building FCS programs right now. If you ball out, you're going to get phone calls from your agents about making more money other places, which is good and bad about the transfer portal. It's nice to see guys get a chance to move on and shine, but at the same time, it's really hard to build a program. So their starting quarterback transferred to Temple. There is a quarterback battle going on, to my knowledge. It's Zach Tanner, who had about 400 yards passing last year at the school. And they have a Harvard graduate transfer, Amir Dudley. So he did not play quarterback, though, in college. He was a decent quarterback in high school at a Pennsylvania school, but never played quarterback in college. So if he starts the game, it's the first time he's going to be playing quarterback in college versus a very senior-led defense. The running back room is led by UMass transfer Dante Wack and Eastern Michigan transfer Owen McGraw, two guys that have FBS experience but did not play much for those teams. They have an all preseason tight end, Chaz Middleton, but it seems like he's a blocking tight end, only 7 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's like a one-game number, never mind a whole season. Other notes about them, former West Virginia receiver Tyler Evans is on their roster. He did not play much for the Mountaineers. They do have several Division I transfers on their defense. That's something to pay attention to. Several guys from Wake Forest, Akron, UMass, Austin Peay, and more. A lot of those guys, though, again, did not play much at those schools, hardly any snaps. So that's the reason why they're at Robert Morris. Chances are, if you're seeing significant snaps at a place like Wake Forest or Akron or UMass, you're probably not going back to Robert Morris. So a lot of those guys are bounce-back players that did not see much playing time. They're picked pretty decently in their conference, though. They're picked 3rd in the Northeast Conference preseason poll, so good luck to them. As I mentioned earlier, West Virginia has never lost to an FCS opponent since we've been playing these games. Let's talk about the depth chart being released. A lot of interesting things with the depth chart. Let's talk about the first thing that everyone's been talking about, and that is Jamori Robinson is not practicing, and Jamori Robinson is obviously not on the depth chart. It's going to be a little scary until we find out about Jamori Robinson if he's eligible to play. We really hope he is. I know West Virginia is doing their best with the clearinghouse to make sure that he's ready to go and they don't hurt themselves institutionally. Rich Rodriguez met with the media on Tuesday and talked about Jamori Robinson, the eligible players. I'm going to play that clip for you guys now.
Okay, so how big is that for you? Give us a little insight on what they can do, and Jamori Robinson, maybe what do you know about his status?
Yeah, we're still waiting on him. The other guys are, we have our general counsel that's working with the NCAA and the Big 12 and our compliance department to make sure we're interpreting the judge's order correctly. Obviously, the order was favorable to those guys being able to play, but we're still in the middle. They're still discussing that. But Jamori has not practiced, but the other three are practicing.
Yeah, it kind of stinks. It's kind of bittersweet, right? Because Jamori Robinson is the biggest one out of all these guys that you want to see play. And when we heard the news, we were super excited, but you kind of had to take it with a grain of salt because earlier in the court proceeding, they said he wasn't eligible. So fingers crossed, hopefully we can get him back on the field. Rich Rodriguez also talked about the depth chart on Tuesday before it was released and said how close it really is and the reason why there's a lot of oars. And he's saying those oars that are on the roster are not just there to fool the opponent. It's because these position battles are still so close. I'm going to also play that clip for you guys now. If it plays. And I think it's not going to play. Anyway, we'll try to get that later in the show.
But if this was hit week one, you probably need to be a little more.
No, typically, as I said, we're not really being coy when we're saying, oh, this guy or this guy, because it's not, and it's not like we're trying to play games with the players either. I mean, they'll know, and obviously when you only put 11 out there, who's going to be the guys. But we've got guys that are rotating now more than I've ever done before, from scout team to regular travel squad deals. They'll take 10 plays on a scout team, then they'll go on the other side and somebody will flip. And so I've never had this many guys that are rotating both ways. Both things that do that, and that's just because a lot of them have not separated themselves enough to be a surefire. He's the guy. He's the starter. He's, the other guy will come in if he gets hurt or something like that. So it's truly pretty open in a lot of spots.
All right, so I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Let me know how you guys feel about that. Is it a good thing that a lot of these competitions are still tight and no one separated themselves and we have that much depth? Or is it a bad thing that no one separated themselves and it's a cause for concern? I guess we'll find out more on Saturday, and you're really going to see who the gamers and who aren't the gamers. I think all of you guys out there, you guys are smart enough. There's a difference between a practice player and a game-changing player. And it's one thing to do it in practice, but it's another thing to do it in front of 66,000 screaming fans at Mountaineer Field. So we'll have to see Saturday. But let's talk about the initial depth chart that was released this week. Let's start with quarterback. 5 oars. It starts with Nico, and then there's an oar. Jalen Henderson, Max Brown, Scotty Fox, and Khalil Wilkins. Let me know in the comments how many you think how many quarterbacks are going to play this week. I think it could be 3 to 5. Completely honest, especially if guys like Coop and Frank Martinez. If we score 60 something points, you could see 5 quarterbacks hypothetically. I think it'll probably be in that 3 to 5 range. Probably closer to 3 being realistic, but let me know in the comments how many quarterbacks you guys think we see this week. One guy who's earned a starting spot is Jaheim White. That's no surprise there. He's probably the focal point of our offense. No Ty Edwards yet on that depth chart. That was pretty interesting to see, having no Ty Edwards. Maybe he hasn't practiced enough to really get on the 2 deep yet, but keep an eye out for that. I hope he gets some time because I think he's the second best back in this room. Jaden Bray is going to be the starting Z receiver. They've hyped up Jaden a lot this offseason. He represented us at Big 12 Media Days, so good to see him. I think he's in for a huge year. Cam Vaughn is going to be starting at the X spot, followed by Justin Smith-Brown and Jeffrey Weimer behind him. Jeffrey Weimer is someone who got late eligibility but has still made the 2 deep, so that's impressive for him. And then Rodney Gallagher, Oren Singleton, and Bowie are splitting the slot position with all those oars. They talked about that this might be the best slot room that they've seen in a long time at West Virginia. So that's good. And then Grayson Barnes and Barrick at tight end. expect Barnes to be the receiving threat and expect Barrick to be the blocking threat there. Let's go over to the offensive line. So the offensive line I found interesting. There was no oars there. So it seems like that you're going to see here solidify their positions, at least going into the first game. So we have Nick Cray, Walter Youngbear, Landon Livingston, Kimo Manakioli, and then Tykees Crawford. The interesting thing is I think all 5 of these guys were there in the spring. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we brought in a lot of talent to push these guys, and it seems like they all held on to their starting spots. Nick Cray and Landon Livingston are 2 Neil Brown guys that are coming back. So congratulations to them for earning those spots. Walter Youngbear is a guy that's played a lot of football at Tulsa coming over. Kimo Manakioli comes over from LSU, who played defensive tackle, but now is making that switch to right guard. And then Tykees Crawford, a guy that has started games in the SEC for Arkansas. So we like that experience. So these are the 5 that we're going to roll with. It's going to be interesting to see how much we rotate with these guys and if other guys get some playing time, but these are the 5 that we're at least going to start the season with. The defensive depth chart has been released as well. We have guys like Eddie Kelly Jr., in the mix, Eddie V, Hammond Russell, and Brandon Siders. So the 2 guys in the middle are returners from last year, Eddie V and Hammond Russell. Nice to see those guys get some play. And then Eddie Kelly came over from Missouri with Braden Siders coming from Wyoming. Should be pretty decent off the edge. Obviously, you wish you had Jamori Robinson. Hopefully we can get him back by the Pitt game, but feel pretty good about the defensive line overall, even without Robinson. Devin Grant came over from Incarnate Word, and Curtis Jones is a guy who had a growth spurt and making some noise. So feel pretty confident about the defensive line going into week 1. Depth chart has been released at linebacker. Chase Wilson and Reed Carrico are going to be your starters. Those guys have established themselves as leaders in this room, and it's no surprise that they are the 2 guys there. I really think you guys are going to love Chase Wilson when we start watching him on Saturday. He's a great player. Depth chart in the secondary was definitely interesting, and that's where I really want to focus on. So Fred Perry and Michael Coates, no surprise there. They're going to highlight the secondary. 2 really great players. Fred Perry is going to lay the wood. He's going to hit you hard right in the mouth. Great player. Michael Coates, 4 interceptions last year, all Mountain West cornerback. No surprise there. The surprises come at the other positions, right? So Jason Chambers is going to be cornerback 1, it looks like, over Devontae Golden Nelson. I'm really surprised that Scruggs didn't work himself as cornerback 1. He's a really good player from South Alabama that had a high PFF grade, but be interesting to see what happens there. I think they're going to rotate a lot of guys and get a lot of guys snaps. The real surprise is Israel Boyce, who only had 11 tackles last year for West Virginia, but jumped KK Tarno and Derek Carter, who are really great players, and is the starter. So, shout out to Israel Boyce, someone who made a jump and made an impression on this camp and beat out 2 really solid guys. So excited to see what Boyce can do. And then Darian Lewis coming over from Akron. You guys are going to love watching him play too, starting at the other safety spot. The dude just completely flies around and makes plays. So I feel comfortable with the secondary. I'm just really surprised by some of these moves. The other thing that you have to remember with the depth chart as a whole is I don't believe the injury report is coming out this week, because I believe the injury report for Big 12 games only comes out versus Big 12 opponents. So take everything you see with a grain of salt. There's a lot of guys not on this depth chart. Tyrus Trough and Christian Hamilton and Ty Edwards. And there's a lot of guys that aren't on this. I'm not sure if they're unavailable to play or if they just got beat out by those positions. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those guys are injured or aren't available, but take everything you see with a grain of salt. Also, Rich Rod said that, even if you don't make the 2 deep, you could still play. They want to play 80 players. So maybe some of these guys that didn't make the initial depth chart have a great game, and then they see more playing time in the future. I mean, if you remember, Hudson Clement a few years ago was a walk-on, had 3 touchdowns in a game, and then earned a scholarship, and then was our leading receiver. So you never know who's going to step up in a game. So just because you see a depth chart doesn't mean it's going to stay like this, and doesn't mean the other guys aren't going to play, but they were some surprises going into the season. Special teams, Hensley and Head are going to do the 2 kickoff positions. Oliver Straw, no surprise, at punter. McGuire Moss is going to be the long snapper. And then Preston Fox earned himself kickoff return and punt return. He really was so solid last year at punt returner. I'm going to knock on wood, but I always feel comfortable when Preston Fox is back there getting punts. He's proven to have sure hands, and I really like the way Preston plays, and it's nice to see him come back from retirement to get a position on the field. Let's talk about the 5 things that I'm looking for West Virginia this week. And the number one thing is how many quarterbacks play. And I kind of answered this, right? I think 3 to 5. I don't think it's going to be 1. I don't think it's going to be 2. I think you're definitely going to see the 3 experienced guys play. And then I don't know about the other ones. We'll see if the younger guys get time. But I want to see Scotty Fox play. I want to see Wilkins play if the scores are as lopsided as they are. Again, let me know in the comments how many quarterbacks you think are going to play. The next thing, what do the positional rotations look like, right? I mentioned Rich Rodriguez said he wants to get 80 guys in this game. Well, you have to rotate a lot to do that. So, if a receiver's hot, are you going to take him off the field and rotate somebody? Or are you going to leave the hot hand out there? So I want to see how many snaps. After the game, one of the first things I'm going to do is look at the snap counts, right? And we're going to see who played how many snaps, and that should be telling of where these guys really are. My third thing is, how much does West Virginia put on film? Let's face it, we're playing Robert Morris. We do not need to put that much on film to beat these guys. You have a big game versus Ohio next week. You have another huge game against Pittsburgh and then the Big 12 opener. So you could probably get away with running some vanilla stuff. So I know Zach Alley wants to dial it up, but how much are you actually going to put on film here? That's something to keep your eye on with West Virginia. This might not be their full game plan week 1 versus a lesser opponent. Number 4, can the offensive line gel? If the offensive line does not gel versus Robert Morris, it's going to be a long season. So I'm going to watch the offensive line in this game probably more than any other game I've ever watched, because they need to be solid. If we need to run the ball and protect the quarterbacks, the offensive line has to gel, and that's a huge question mark. So I'm going to be watching the offensive line a lot in this game. And then how much do the recently eligible players get in? I mentioned Jamoy Robinson isn't practicing. He's not going to play. Ty Edwards wasn't on the depth chart, but does that mean he's unavailable? Jeffrey Weimer and Harrington were on the 2 deep. How much do they play? What kind of impact do they make? All questions that I want to look for this weekend. Again, if you guys have any questions about what you want to see this weekend, leave them in the comments. Let's talk about Alabama series getting canceled. This broke some news this week. So the 2026 and 2027 games versus Alabama are unfortunately canceled. I've seen 2 different ways to look at this, and I can make cases for both, right? On the one hand, it is extremely disappointing, right? I was actually at the last Alabama game in the Georgia Dome. I was actually covering the team and sitting in the press box, and that was an unbelievable experience. And I was so proud of that West Virginia team for competing in that game. They really battled them to the end, and that was a proud game to have, even though you lost. On the other hand, though, you're looking at most likely 2 losses. Let's be real. Alabama recruits at a very high level. It's going to be year 2 of Rich Rod, so who knows how that game could go. But do you really want to start off 0-1 back-to-back seasons when you're trying to build momentum? This football program desperately needs wins. And a lot of people don't look at schedules. They don't look at you've lost to Penn State. They look at your 0-1, right? So when you finish 6-6 and you barely make a bowl game, it's a bad look. But if you look at our record and say, we won 8 games, you see what I mean? I get it. I understand that it's disappointing. I understand that it's disappointing, and we want to play these games. But at the same time, I think you have to look at the positive, right? We need wins desperately, and that's a huge thing. I have another comment from Appalachian African Twin. JerseyEER, this is a solid, legit breakdown. Hey, man, I really appreciate that, right? This is a young channel. We've been growing like crazy. So if you're watching this, please like and subscribe. I'm going to do my best to keep pumping out these videos and give my take about the Mountaineers. So I really appreciate the comments, guys. I really do. Let's get back into the future schedule now, right? So we have the non-conference opponents updated now. They did not waste any time about getting new opponents on the schedule. So in 2026, we're going to play Coastal Carolina, UT Martin, and Virginia. So you still keep your Power 4 opponent. It's a very winnable game. Charlotte is going to be packed with Mountaineer fans, so that one should still be fun. So that's not that big of a deal. The one that gets a lot of pushback is 2027, Southern Miss, VMI, and Ohio. Ohio's home this time. I get it. There's no Virginia Tech, there's no Maryland, there's no Pitt, there's no Penn State. But for one season, it kind of is what it is. A lot of teams are already booked, and you had to do your best with what you had. Let's just enjoy that season and do the best we can. Hopefully, it's 3 wins, right? Because in the other years, you still have some good games to look forward to. You play Tennessee the year after, as of right now. You play Pitt back on that schedule. So don't panic. It is what it is. Let's just get through the season first. You never know what's going to happen with conference realignment anyway. Let's see. Next things. 53-man roster, NFL. Let's talk about this. Yesterday was a tough day to be a Mountaineer for a lot of our guys. Let's talk about the negative first, right? So guys like Tony Fields, Garrett Green, Doug Nestor, Beanie Bishop, Will Grier, and Daryl Worley unfortunately did not make the 53-man roster. I think the biggest surprise was Beanie Bishop for how well he played last year. I know some Pitt fans are actually excited that he got cut, which is kind of weird, but hopefully Beanie gets picked up. I haven't checked Twitter or anything today, so maybe some of these guys got picked up on a practice squad or anything like that. If you guys know, definitely let me know in the comments, but I think Beanie Bishop, there's a good chance he can get back on a practice squad. Will Grier has to be ready to have his number called. Doug Nestor, Garrett Green, Tony Fields, they're all talented guys. It wouldn't surprise me if they get picked up later in the season. Speaking of that, let's talk about the guys that made the roster. Let's start off with David Sills, man. A guy that's been in the league for a while now, has had practice squad stints with the Giants, even played with the Giants for a little bit, played some games with Denver Broncos. So David Sills is another guy that is still making money playing professional football. And we love David Sills, right? He was one of the most underrated Mountaineers. So to see him make a roster, I really hope he can do big things this year, because he is one of our favorite players we ever had. Geno Smith, big season with the Las Vegas Raiders. Going to be fascinating to see how he does with Pete Carroll this year. Zach Frazier right now, who probably is the best Mountaineer in the NFL, in my opinion. Looking like one of the best centers in football. So Zach Frazier making the roster is no surprise. Colton McKivitz looking for that second contract with San Francisco 49ers. Dante Stills gets another year in the NFL with Arizona, so congrats to him. Wyatt Milam, Jacksonville Jaguars. He's a 3rd-round pick, so you knew he was going to kind of make the team. The surprising one was Rasul Douglas, right? So Rasul Douglas wasn't in camp very long for Miami Dolphins, but gets picked up. Tell you what, man, Rasul Douglas, what a great player. When he played for the West Virginia Mountaineers, he was making some big-time plays. Never forget the BYU game, the pick 6 he had, right? This guy was a savage on the football field and has had a really long, nice NFL career. The point is, guys, I think that there's only about 9 players there that are currently active in the NFL. Cajuste and Whedon are on the IR, but if West Virginia is going to improve, we got to get these numbers up. Like Will Grier's team, I think they had 6 or 7 draft picks alone in that one season. So only having 9 guys in the NFL, that's probably a huge reason why we've been struggling recently, is the just classic NFL talent. I like another comment from Appalachian. That just means 2 Pittsburgh teams are going to receive a brutal welcoming to the Rich Rod 2.0 era. Yeah, I know you guys are fired up, right? I mean, it's going to be a crazy season. Seeing Rich Rod on the sidelines on Saturday is going to be a full circle moment. I was a freshman in high school the last time he was on the sidelines for West Virginia. So it is going to be so cool to see him out there, even versus Robert Morris. Let's talk about this, the big opportunity ahead. So the Big 12, let's talk about this, right? The Big 12 has a good opportunity ahead of them. They got good momentum on Saturday in week 0, right? Saw the biggest game by far was week 0, the noon game, Kansas State and Iowa State. Teams didn't play great in the first half, but it showed we can play some defense, right? Rocco Becht, how about him? How nice would it have been to have him on the team? He looked pretty good. And then, so Iowa State gets a big win. And then Kansas, they looked pretty good. I'm not going to lie, right? I know it was only against Fresno State, but their defense looked much improved. Jaden Daniels looked like the old Jaden Daniels. That one's going to be tough, right? I know I've been kind of hard on Kansas, and I'm not going to say they're going to win the Big 12, but that game's going to be tough. It looks like they rebounded. They opened up the stadium. So you have a lot of positive momentum in the Big 12 going into the weekend. Another big opportunity, though, right? In this era of conference realignment and Big 12 and the playoff, these games matter. So let's talk about some of the bigger games in the Big 12 this weekend. Nebraska versus Cincinnati. Dylan Raiola, right? And those guys versus Sorsby. That should be a fascinating game. It's going to be a tough spot for Cincinnati. I'm not sure what they bring this year. I know some people are not that high on them, but they have a great opportunity. That game's being played at Arrowhead Stadium. Friday night, what a night Friday. Auburn at Baylor. It's going to be a blackout there. They're really hyping that up. I'm actually surprised that Baylor's underdogs in that game. Auburn hasn't been great. Auburn hasn't been great the last few seasons. So Baylor being an underdog, they should have a chip on their shoulder. I personally like Baylor in that game. I like Sawyer Robinson. Georgia Tech versus Colorado. In my opinion, that's kind of like a coin flip game. A lot of people are high on Georgia Tech. And it's going to be interesting to see what Colorado does this year. They have Caden Salter coming over from Liberty. So it's going to be fascinating to see what Colorado looks like without Travis Hunter, without Shedeur Sanders. So that game's also at 9 o'clock. So you might want to get 2 TVs out if you're a West Virginia fan and you want to watch some solid Big 12 football. And then Utah at UCLA. Utah is another team that has been feeling really confident this offseason, even though they struggled. They have Devin Dampier at quarterback. Rushed for over 1,000 yards last year at New Mexico, but if you look at his throwing numbers, 12 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. They have a great offensive line. They have a great coach, but could you imagine if they go out and lose to UCLA? That would take the air right out of the bubble for Utah, but we kind of have to root for them because they are in our conference and we want to beat a Big Ten team. And then cap it off with TCU versus Bill Belichick and UNC on primetime national television on Monday. I mean, these are all primetime games. A lot of people are going to be watching these games, especially Thursday, Friday, and Monday when there's no other games being played. This is a massive opportunity for our conference, right? If we can win the majority of these games, the narrative around the Big 12 would shift. We would definitely pass the ACC as far as better conference. And I already think it's better already, but that's not to everybody. And it could really show that the Big 12 is in for an exciting season. We have really good quarterbacks. We have really good coaches, and we have dangerous teams who you might not want to play in the playoffs. So it's a big opportunity ahead this non-conference season starting this weekend with national TV eyeballs. And that's all I really got, guys. We went for 32 minutes. First live show in a while. I was on vacation and had a chance to really do a live show. So we had a ton of people in here. Really appreciate it. Like I said, if you're a Mountaineer fan, please like and subscribe to the show. We want to keep growing this thing. Do some live reactions after games, give you the previews, give you the recaps, and really grow JerseyEER. Really appreciate you guys. Again, please like and subscribe. With that being said, I have one more comment. Emilio said he likes USF versus Boise. Oh, yeah, and one more thing I forgot to mention about the games on Thursday. Rutgers versus Ohio. Pay attention to that one, right? I know some of us are a little nervous about Ohio. They play Rutgers, so that's going to be a good measuring stick. Rutgers is about a 2-touchdown favorite in that one. I'll be taking notes on that one to see what Ohio has, especially because the game's only 45 minutes from my house, and I'm always interested to see how Rutgers does. So pay attention to Ohio versus Rutgers. Never been to a Rich Rod game, always watched at home. Yeah, me either, Emilio, right? My first game was actually Marshall versus West Virginia 2011, and they had a lightning delay in that one. That's when Tavon literally returned a kick, and they had a lightning stoppage for like 7 hours. The game actually ended in the third quarter because they couldn't finish the game, and both schools just agreed that it was over because the score was lopsided. I've never been to a Rich Rod game either. And then Emilio says he'll be there Saturday. I plan on being there for Colorado, so that's the game I'm going to get down to. Enjoy the weather, guys. It's going to be a beautiful day down there in Mountaineer country. Really enjoy that. It's going to be awesome. One more comment. A Rich Rod W game is called a slobber knocker. Yeah, absolutely. Should be a really fun one. Like I said, I'm going to be pinching myself to see Rich Rod out there with the Mountaineers. All right, guys, listen, it's been fun. I appreciate you guys. Let's go Mountaineers. Enjoy the weather on Saturday. We'll talk to you guys soon.